Ouais, salut tout le monde et comment allez-vous? Moi ça va nickel et donc là on se retrouve pas pour une petite vidéo j'allais dire mais pour une grosse vidéo. Donc là je vais vous mettre donc dans quelques instants donc la réaction donc au live de BUNGIE qui a eu lieu donc ce mardi et 1er octobre à 19 h. Bon au passage si jamais vous avez loupé le live, bon bah c'est un peu dommage, vous avez loupé un drop Twitch, un emblème du Seigneur, mais bon c'est pas le sujet de la vidéo. Et du coup bon bah petit live de BUNGIE donc qui nous a présenté déjà donc quelques trucs concernant la saison prochaine donc qui commence le 8 octobre donc d'ici une semaine. Et après on a également donc des informations concernant donc la suite, donc l'année 11 de Salut, tout, donc avec les DLC donc Apollon et Behemoth. Donc voilà c'est tout, donc bon il y a quand même quelques informations et au passage bon bah je vous invite donc à activer les sous-titres donc directement de YouTube. C'est au niveau du petit rouage là juste en dessous là, si vous mettez les sous-titres en français parce que bon bah le live il était uniquement en anglais et donc bon bah pour les personnes qui parlent pas forcément l'anglais, bon bah ça peut vite devenir relou, donc je vous invite à mettre les sous-titres, comme ça vous allez pouvoir tout suivre. C'est un vrai, les sous-titres sur YouTube ils marchent quand même bien, notamment en anglais, donc ça devrait aller. Et voilà, bon bah sur ce j'espère que cette petite vidéo vous plaira. Si vous allez voir il y a des informations plutôt cool et d'autres bon bah, un peu moins bonnes. Par exemple le brise-glace, bon bah, on sait à peu près comment il marche. Bon on n'a pas tout le kit en détail mais on a un peu un petit aperçu et bon bah ça sera pas comme sur Destiny hein. Mais sur ce je vous dis pas plus. Donc au passage désolé si l'intro est un peu longue, de toute façon il y a les timecodes juste en bas. Mais du coup là je vous fais donc la vidéo donc, où je vous montre tout le clip, donc tout le live. Et demain il y aura donc une petite vidéo récap, donc il y aura les récaps des informations de ce live de BUNGIE. Et après il y aura également donc les informations de la tweed qui sortiront ce jeudi soir. Donc comme ça vous aurez donc là la vidéo en entière, comme ça si jamais vous voulez mettre ça en fond pendant que vous faites vos contrats. Au passage n'hésitez pas à mettre les contrats de côté pour être prêt donc pour le day 1 ou le day 2 du prochain donjon. Et voilà, et donc et après vendredi matin vous aurez donc la vidéo avec les informations donc en version condensée comme je fais d'habitude. Voilà. Allez sur ce bon bah, c'est tout pour cette longue introduction, mais bon bah c'était obligé. Bon bah j'espère que cette vidéo vous plaira et bon bah je vous dis à très vite pour d'autres vidéos sur Destiny tout. Allez, salut tout le monde.
Now you've narrative directed us into our segue as well, so thank you very much. Narrative design as well, and so I think we should go ahead and dive into a little bit of gameplay. Starting over here with you, Clayton. We just heard a little bit about some mechanics and everything. Can you tell us a little bit about where we are and what we're going to be doing here? This is the new apothecary, I believe.
That's right. So we're in the apothecary space, and Jerome was just mentioning the tonics and potions that we'll be crafting. They come in two flavors.
On va pouvoir faire des potions.
Flavors, and they come in reward flavors.
Okay.
The combat flavors are going to enhance or rather boost your artifact perks, specific ones.
Yeah.
Ça va booster les perks de l'artefact?
Boost multiple artifact perks, which is really great.
Okay. Yeah.
And then on the reward side, we wanted to create a new or novel way to chase your gear and your weapons that you love.
Yeah.
And we took a lot of inspiration from the success of Into the Light.
Mais ça, du coup, c'est par exemple, là, si vous prenez une popo, ça dure 60 minutes, la légendaire, là. Et ça va améliorer donc 2 perks de l'artefact que vous voyez là en bleu, là, bleu turquoise. Après, il y a des versions EXO. Ok, on a aussi des popos pour augmenter les récompenses. En tuant des ennemis ou en terminant des activités.
Episode artifact and everything. These are going to go ahead and help just boost a lot of those traits, I guess, yeah?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So build crafters, make sure your appetites are whetted and ready. There's going to be plenty of stuff for you to go ahead and dive into. But we're going to go ahead also and dive into some of the meat and potatoes of today's stream, proverbially speaking. As we're on our way over to Onslaught, Clayton, I just want to go ahead and also start there. Onslaught's getting kind of a new revamp this episode as well.
Agression qui va avoir une
qui va être revue là. This time around.
Correct. Yeah. And so we heard players' feedback. They want to see us invest in Onslaught. We are coming out with a brand new Onslaught called Onslaught Salvation.
Yeah.
We are going to have 3 maps that you'll be in there. You will have some new defenses. We'll have enemy factions that will be fighting into the theme of this episode. Yeah. We'll have the Scorn, we'll have the Dark Cabal.
That's right.
A bunch of other new stuff that we can get into.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll be diving into that here briefly. You can see our fire team is now on their way. While we're on the way over as well, I heard a brief mention of our friends in the Shadow Legion as well.
On a un écran noir, les gars.
C'est
le Day 1, c'est le Day 1 du donjon, les gars. Il y a un écran noir.
The Shadow Legion are bumming. They are in utter disarray.
Ils vont lancer une agression là?
Slain, and they are grasping to anyone who can keep them in power.
Yeah.
And Fikrul holds the most powerful artifact around now.
Got it.
So they will be doing his bidding, though it will be a tenuous alliance.
They're going with Fickrell's Riz just for right now, but that may not be the case later on.
That's right. We will do our best to stomp that out.
Thank you. All right, fair enough. Much appreciated. All right, so now we are here. We're in Onslaught. We're on Widow's Court.
Donc nouvelle arène les gars pour le mode agression. Donc on est dans la cour de la veuve. Ok, nouvelle. Oh, par contre, regardez le skin du lance-grenade là. Ah mais attends, mais c'est pas... C'est l'arme que je vous avais montré là il y a quelques temps là. Attends, mais c'est quoi? Parce que ça a des mines infinies.
10 wave mode, the normal 50 wave mode, and then we'll have our expert 50 wave mode.
Oh, on a des nouvelles tourelles.
New thing about Onslaught Salvation, one of the new things.
Ah ouais, les tourelles du Seigneur. Mais attends, mais ça va tirer tout seul?
Like it was prior in Into the Light.
Oh, right.
Et on doit monter dessus.
So your armor and your weapons will matter even more.
Yeah.
It will be
upgrade.
Oh,
airstrikes.
You can, through getting better, more power and grinding that artifact level, you'll be able to kind of outweigh that difficulty. Yeah. And you'll also be able to, rely on some of the new defenses as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, we were just looking at a turret that maybe Guardians haven't seen since their days on the moon in D1.
Yeah.
Tell us, like, what's going on? We got some new defenses, obviously.
Mais attends, mais ce truc, c'est quoi, les gars? On est d'accord, c'est un genre de lance-grenade à mine infinie, c'est une nouvelle catégorie.
As well as other things in Onslaught. She's worked with the Sandbox team, who have knocked it out of the park with this rival turret. So it is kind of a standard rival turret at first, but by upgrade 3, it's going to have more health, it's going to be dealing more damage.
Ouais, mais là, t'as mine infinie, là.
Rounds come out of it.
Okay.
And what the cool thing about that is that if you have...
c'est un lance-grenade à mine infinie, ouais.
With fragments or what have you within scorching, that will play off that if you're the rider.
Very nice. Okay. Yeah. So you can go ahead and really scorch everyone.
Everyone. Clumps of enemies, those annoying demolitionists that come in front of the ADU and scare the hell out of you.
Yeah, they do. That was my words. Okay, they do scare that.
Oh les gars, c'était quoi ce pont?
So in the subject or in the topic of new defenses, so we're bringing back.
Oh, le lance-grenade, il donne envie, les gars. Le pompe, ça a l'air d'être un exo. Mais ils savent nous re-hype à chaque fois, les gars. Ils sont trop forts. Ils sont trop forts pour ça. Ils sont trop forts. En tout cas, le lance-grenade, il me donne grave envie, les gars. Regardez, là, ça va tomber. Il y a un missile storm qui va tomber, non? Oh, il a pas eu le temps de le lancer. Parce que t'as des frappes aériennes maintenant aussi, là.
But there's some really nice
upgrades. Yeah, Nimbus liked that. We'll just go ahead and put that.
There you go.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And actually, so just to double check as well with the airstrike.
Bah, le lance-grenade, il est exo, je pense.
It actually has to wait for someone to kind of trigger that.
Possible, je sais pas, on sait pas, on sait pas.
Much like the tripwire, which we are also updating for Onslaught Salvation. We've heard the feedback about the tripwires, and we want to bring their value up a little more. So now they're going to be exploding with stasis.
Ah si, le lance-grenade, il est sympa.
Higher upgrades will be creating
stasis
crystals for you to play off.
Munitions infinies, quoi. Et tu frises tout le monde. Updates will also be available in the original Onslaught as well.
Very nice. Okay, so all the updates that are happening to the defenses that are available in Onslaught Salvation will be available in the traditional Onslaught mode as well.
Just the tripwires,
Ah ouais, par contre, le temps que ça met, les gars, pour que la frappe, elle frappe justement la frappe aérienne. Faut pas être pressé, quoi.
Try and bring up the new breach loading grenade launcher that our fire team here is getting a lot of use out of. There's obviously a decent chunk of new weapons arriving with Revenant, but let's start here. This is the new.
Et ils vont parler des armes donc.
Yeah, this would be the season pass exotic.
Ah, c'est le pass. Ah, c'est l'arme exotique du pass, les gars, le lance-grenade là. C'est l'arme exotique du pass.
Primary ammo grenade launcher before, which is Fighting Lion. Which is getting a buff this season as well. Actually, it'll.
That's right. Yeah.
Make enemies volatile when it hits them, so like serious build crafting there, particularly in PvE. But anyway,
I cannot wait.
So this is a bit different in that it's also a projectile travel in a straight line, so like mountaintop.
Yeah.
Ouais, c'est comme le mountain top, ça part comme une balle à la mine.
Is that as you defeat enemies, you will gather these remnants, which will fill up the exotic bar, which you can see in the hardware people aren't dead.
Yeah, it's the shade.
Yes.
Je sais pas encore ce que je ferai
No,
Sky.
that's true. Yeah,
Je sais
this is.
pas.
We should note for the Guardians at home. This is an expert mode, so they're taking the hard way, obviously.
But yeah, so when the bar reaches
Du coup, ça
50%,
c'est
you
une
get
arme
special
exotique, les gars.
reload,
Du
and
coup,
your
le
next
pompe,
shot
c'est
will
une arme
launch
légendaire, ce qu'on a vu
special
avant.
ammo brick for you and your allies to pick up.
Very nice.
And when you reach 100, you can special reload and launch heavy ammo. So this lets you really go in on a new type of support role, which is like ammo support, which we haven't really seen in the game before.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think on my side, I really just spend a lot of the time getting like the Seeker and Finder mods on my helmet, but it seems like a nice additional way to go ahead and make sure that you're really feeding
c'est un lance-grenade, quoi.
of the heavy ammo burners like myself who have been addicted to microcosm recently. So
Potentially you could have one person in the fire team go all in on ammo generation, and the other folks build something else.
Also, so Clayton, when it comes to the other stuff that's arriving with Onslaught Salvation,
Qu'est-ce qu'il y a d'autre comme stuff qui
we're
arrive?
looking forward to? I know that we're obviously fighting the evolved Scorn, but are there any new bosses or anything people can look forward to?
Right. So the Fickrel Scorn are also going to be coming out with what we're calling the Revenant Baron.
Okay.
And that thing is scary, and you'll see it on wave 6 here in a second when the players are instructed to go into like a Revenant nest and go and save the Elixni from being captured.
Yeah.
These Revenant Barons, they stalk the area, and when you kill them, they will create a Revenant totem which flies in a random direction, leaving a trail so you can kind of like stalk it.
Ah oui, je crois il y a un délire de création de menus qui est là.
Yeah, so there's some hide and seek gameplay there. Yeah, and so we also have for.
Du coup, le pompe il est légendaire, les gars. Là, ça c'est une arme du pass de la saison.
Players will have a small chance to get a fully masterworked double perk episodic weapon.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, and on expert, like we're playing.
Yeah.
If you remember, the bonus chest on harder difficulties will show up. So if you're playing on expert, you have 2 chances.
Okay. All right. So really make sure you're pushing through those.
Ah les gars, je suis ultra fan de lance-grenade. J'adore.
100%. Something we mentioned recently in one of our dev insight logs as well are Banes, which are going to be making an appearance here in Onslaught. Can you tell us a little bit about that as well?
Yeah. So we'll be with the expert mode only. We'll be having Banes throughout the activity, and we'll also be adding mods. So it's really nice to have them show up because they add another layer of replayability into expert. You don't know if you're going to get the gaseous one where you got a dot on you, or if you have to break line of sight, but it adds a fun variability.
Il se fait démarrer.
So every wave feels different.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have. Oh, please.
I just wanted to point out here.
Please.
You'll notice 2 things. First off, the fire team is tracking that Revenant Baron, just like you said.
Yeah.
And also freeing captured Elixni. And as to why people want to keep Elixni captives alive, I'll save that for the players to discover.
Sounds devious.
The other thing is that you'll see Crow chiming in a lot. He's features prominently in the season.
Right,
Because he is inadvertently, of course, responsible for creating Fickrel, and so it's his responsibility as the new Hunter Vanguard to rectify his old problem.
Interesting. Even though he can't be like, hey man, that was Ultron.
Ah, le pompe il a l'air sympa aussi,
take
hein.
responsibility for that.
Absolutely.
Old Fickrel's fickle out there.
Ah mais c'est pas fini, Aska, c'est pas fini, c'est pas fini. Aska il est aigri, les gars, c'est pas fini, c'est pas fini. Et comment va Croptis?
There will be some other Elixni, some venerable old school Elixni that poke their heads in that you'll see some drama with. I won't say any more than that.
Fair.
But it will be in everyone's interest to see Fickrel go down here.
Okay, got it. A little bit of enemy, my enemy. In this case, they're all our enemy.
That's right.
Fair enough. Actually, really quickly, Clayton, I know we kind of touched on several different subjects here between the different defenses, different enemies, the different kind of, structural opportunities that Onslaught Salvation has provided you. What was it like, sitting down with the team and sort of looking at this new refresh on this activity? Like, did you guys take any big challenges for yourself where, like, we want to do this?
Yeah, we knew we just wanted to build and evolve and just do more.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
It's a metal episode. We want to do Onslaught. Let's metal it up. Right? So things like the
Mais du coup, ils vont sûrement mettre de nouvelles armes aussi en agression là. Est-ce qu'ils vont nous montrer un peu les armes qui vont revenir ou pas?
And you're seeing that in the roll dart, you're seeing that in the different defenses and the mechanics that we're bringing in as well. Yeah.
Mais ils sont trop forts, Croptis.
One thing I forgot to mention too is we are updating the moth yards from the original Onslaught.
Ah, le lance-grenade, les gars, je vous le dis de suite, je vais jouer qu'avec ça maintenant.
Our goal is to bring that in line with the rest of the maps.
Je vais le jouer H24 en PV, ce truc.
Updates there to get that to go.
Very exciting. So reasons, obviously, to dive into all versions of Onslaught as we go ahead and move into Revenant.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Actually, and while we're here, out here, you know, slaying out as best as we can against this new undead army, Chris, we're going to have obviously a slew of new episodic weapons arriving this time.
Yeah.
I know we've kind of spoken about this this breach loading grenade launcher. Are there any other notable ones that you're most interested in, or most excited rather, I should say, in bringing back?
Yeah, there are a few weapons that I'm going to personally be chasing.
C'est ça, ouais. En ramassant les orbes, les âmes là, vous pouvez créer des munitions. Là, le mec il vient de créer des lourdes, les gars. Le mec vient de créer des lourdes avec le lance-grenade là, en ramassant les âmes là. C'est.
New perk Envious Arsenal, which is like directly targeted at damage rotations. So whenever you do damage with the other two weapons, the weapon reloads.
Yeah.
So you can just cycle between your weapons.
Le lance-grenade, les gars, je le mets déjà en S dans la tier list. Je le mets en S dans la tier list, les gars. Il est déjà S, il est pas sorti, il est déjà S.
So the hand cannon can run the new perk Rhyme Stealer, which every time you shatter a stasis crystal or a frozen enemy will grant you frost armor.
Yeah.
Which is the new verb we introduced recently.
Right.
And that can also roll with Headstone, which will generate stasis crystals.
Yeah.
So you've got this like.
Il y a une nouvelle perk qui va sortir, les gars, qui.
Submachine gun is an arc precision.
Je crois que c'est quand vous pétez un mec qui est stase, vous gagnez de l'armure du givre là, mais je suis pas sûr.
Shoot, what is the name of that?
My memory's failing me.
Anyway, it directly ties back into Jolt, right? Like the Vault Shot is great, but it requires a reload on your weapon after a kill.
Là, il parle de tir
This
voltaïque.
one's triggered on sustained damage, so you will jolt the target, and then the perk I'm going for in the other column is Loose Change, which every time you apply a debuff gives you a reload speed buff. So you'll be constantly having that loop cycle.
Yeah. And also, so we're going to look at the new artifact here in a little bit once we go ahead and move through this final wave of what's in front of us right now.
Là, ils viennent de parler des deux nouvelles perks.
It's been featured a little bit in some art about Destiny's 10th anniversary, an exotic of yesteryear, we'd say, for all the Guardians who have been sticking around for a while, rather. Icebreaker is returning.
Ah, le brise-glace. Oui, le brise-glace qui revient avec le prochain donjon.
Holding off on doing just because the ammo economy issues that are introduced in Destiny 1 are pretty dire.
Yeah.
But we've got a version here which we think lets you get back into that fantasy of just like always having uptime on the weapon without letting you just hang back and like plink away at enemies from range, which I never like. So the way it works is assists and final blows with other weapons will just generate ammo for Icebreaker.
Got it.
It's
Okay.
got like a 10 magazine,
ça a marché comme ça.
Same size as reserves.
Yeah.
So the play is that in between boss damage phases or something, you and your team slay out, and as long as you're getting assists or kills, you'll come back in fully loaded.
Got it. Yeah.
And you know, in Destiny 1, there wasn't actually any ice to break, right?
Donc il va pas créer des munitions à l'infini, les gars, au fil du temps. Il faut faire des kills ou des assistances avec d'autres armes pour avoir des munes sur le brise-glace. Ça va marcher comme ça apparemment. Il aura pas les munes infinies comme à l'époque.
Now, while we're still here, let's go ahead and check out the new artifact that's going to be arriving. We love getting a chance to show all of you folks this early, so you can go ahead and start your build crafting. But Chris, you know, I know obviously last time around, if I had to kind of paint it with a meta I'd say rather it'd be very focused on sniper rifles, solar. If there was a similar theme for this particular artifact, what would it be?
So it goes very hard into stasis. Like touches all of the stasis verbs.
Ouais, j'ai envie de mettre pause, les gars. J'ai envie de mettre pause. J'ai envie de tout lire.
Here, we're also adding a bunch of grenade launcher perks. So we've got
dealing damage with a grenade legit upon a grace to load.
Like super deadly.
Ah, les lance-grenades, les gars, ça va être la méta prochaine saison. C'est méta prochaine saison, les gars, les lance-grenades.
Everyone's favorite grenade launcher artifact perk, Breach and Clear.
Oh, yes.
Use grenades to damage boss, damage outbreak combatant, shields, weaken them. Ça va, les lance-grenades, ça va affaiblir aussi les mecs.
Artifact perks with the potion system.
That's right, yeah. Good. I also will admit I'm very selfishly excited to see Anti-Barrier Scout Rifle back. It's been so long.
Anti-Barrier.
I've missed it.
Barrier Scout is great.
I'm going to pretend like that's just for me, for my own benefit today.
We're trying something a bit different with this artifact
Rapid
as
fire
well.
again, weakened combatants, grant you devoration.
Anti-champion mods, and the final column is all of the
Mais du coup, en faisant des kills au lance-grenades, vous allez avoir de dévoration.
But columns 2, 3, and 4 are roughly equivalent in power, which will let you mix and match them more freely instead of feeling like you have to like go for the top tier ones. They're all usable in build.
It's less of a linear escalation, more just a mix and match in a lot of ways. Very exciting. Okay, so there'll be plenty of opportunities for players to go ahead and amplify their builds, go ahead and really lean into one play style. If, again, you're like me and want to run double grenade launchers, this feels like a remarkably great season to be doing that, especially with the Fighting Lion buff. Thank you for sharing that with us. But
il a l'air sympa l'artefact.
For this particular segment,
Il va être sympa l'artefact là. Il a l'air sympa.
I wanted to go ahead and tease for the arrival of Act 1. For starters, an old favorite strike is going to be making its return. The inverted spire is returning. But Clayton, it's not coming back exactly as people remember it, is it?
Nope.
Ah, l'araignée qui a changé?
Qu'est-ce
qui s'est passé?
Adjusting all the encounters, and you'll see more Vex than what you're used to.
That's true. I can confirm. My compatriot on the social media team, Mitch, showed me through it a little bit. The only thing I'll spoil is if you like death lasers, you're going to have a great time out there. And then in addition to that, there's one more thing we wanted to add in. Arriving with Act 2, mind you, of Revenant, and I'm going to read this to make sure I get it right, inspired from a fan favorite activity from Destiny's past. We're going to go ahead and bring back an activity, but we're not going to tell you anything outside of that.
Il y a une activité de...
Let us know what you think. Go ahead and shout us out on Twitter or wherever
Une ancienne activité qui va revenir sur le jeu, les gars.
But with that, I think we're going ahead and ready to get ready, pardon me, for the next segment. But in the meantime, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and share a little bit of what's arriving.
Par contre, ce qui est dommage, les gars, c'est que je viens d'y penser, mais le catalyseur de lance-grenade, la stase, là, qui a l'immune infinie, on l'aura que à l'acte 2.
Now, as we transition into our next stage, we've got what we've called in my notes the cool stuff segment, and I think it lives up to that. So we'll go ahead and show you a little bit more of what's to be arriving with Revenant, including what you're seeing here on your screen right now. This is the second earnable skimmer that's going to be arriving in Destiny 2. The aptly named, we'll wait for it to highlight, the Zerf board. I was so glad that was in it stock. As you can see, it features some very unique 9 styling, inspired by Zer himself. Both top and bottom are very arted up. The top's obviously a little bit more visible here, but if you do a sweet front flip or back flip, if you're capable of it, you can go ahead and see all sides of it. Notably, this is going to be earnable. So if you go ahead and start saving up those strange coins now, it's going to cost you 97 of them. So if you're like me and spend your weekends spending all those extra strange coins at Zer to go ahead and get more rolls.
Ça coûtera des pièces étranges, les gars. Ça coûtera des pièces étranges.
Also, because I work here, I've started saving up already, spoiler alert. But the Zerf board will be available with the arrival of Revenant. So make sure and go ahead and grab.
Ok, il sera disponible directement à la sortie du prochaine saison.
In addition to that, we obviously have mentioned very recently that we're going to be having a new dungeon arriving with Revenant, and as a part of this, we're going to be doing a dungeon race in cooperation with our friends over at Twitch Rivals. We've put the sign-up link out there. It's available on our social media channels or in the TWID, or if you prefer your URL's phonetic, it's bungie.ie/TwitchRivals. You can go ahead and head out there, sign up with your fire team, and make sure that you're ready to go ahead and take on this new challenge, which will, again, also provide some additional chances for Bungie rewards. You can see here on the screen, we've got a look at the hoodie that will be earnable.
Tout ça, les gars, c'est payant, c'est dans la boutique.
But perhaps what's most interesting about the hoodie is that as
oui, je mettrai la rediff sur la chaîne.
If you're one of the top 3 teams to go ahead and cross that proverbial finish line, then we'll be able to ship out a special embroidered version with your gamer tag on it as well. So make sure and go ahead and dive on in and prepare to try and cross that finish line first. And now we're also going to take one quick look. Festival of the Lost is going to be arriving. Ah,
le festival des âmes perdues, les gars. L'événement d'Halloween. Qu'est-ce qu'il y a comme info? Ah, les skins. Donc c'est le set sorcier cette année. Et salut Star-Lord, comment ça va-t-il? Oh, de la grenade flash.
The evil gothic set is just going to only dial up more and more. Up next, our friendly neighborhood warlocks. You've got this to look forward to, including what
Vous êtes fan ou pas là du set sorcier? Moi, je suis sceptique.
Over here at Bungie, and breaking out from the crowd,
le titan est dégueulasse par contre, je suis désolé.
You're going to have the chance to go ahead and add this into your arsenal as well.
Le titan est horrible.
Make sure that you're prepared to go ahead and dive on into Festival of the Lost and grab this stuff once it's available. And I'm going to be doing that, so maybe I'm just projecting. But either way, make sure and get ready to go ahead and update your fashion where you can. But now we get to move on to our second segment of the show, where we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit more about what's further on down the road. So we've talked about what's just around the corner. Let's look forward to frontiers. And
ok, donc là, ils vont parler de l'année 11, les gars.
Today as well, rather, are these two fine individuals to my left, which you've met at some point or another, but again, we'll make sure and introduce them to everyone out there in the crowd. We'll start with you first, Allison. Allison, how's it going?
It's going so good. I'm bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
We're up so early. I'm doing well, thank you so much.
Good.
Allison, obviously narrative director here on Destiny at Bungie. Can you tell anyone who may not have seen you in a Vidoc or one of our past streams a little bit more about yourself and what you do?
Sure. So I'm the narrative director for D2. It is me and my team's job to tell stories. It's our job to take care of our characters, of our arcs. We make you laugh, we make you cry, we make you have feelings that you normally don't have to have in your usual day-to-day life.
I was raised not to feel feelings, so it's a very upsetting experience when I do.
Feelings are distressing, I understand. We also get to plan future things, planning ahead for the arcs to come.
Yes.
And the
saga
to come.
About. I know, the whole new saga. We'll have a little bit to dive into as well today. I know, I'm so excited. And then also sitting next to her, Robbie Stevens, assistant game director here at Bungie, a man that I've not had a chance to interview since back in my Mixer days. But if you've tuned into these Bungie streams in the past, you've seen him as well. Robbie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Andy. And you know, I think you've grown a lot since those days.
It's been so long, right? Yeah. My badge changed and everything. For the folks that may not know you or may not know what a game director does, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so one of the main things I do as assistant game director for Destiny 2 is I work on the creative direction and vision for where we're going with Destiny coming up in the future with Codename Frontiers. So I get to work with our game director, Tyson Green, and Allison Lurs, our narrative director, and a bunch of our other creative leaders on how we shape the future of Destiny to come.
Very exciting, which we are going to be diving into now. I know we've obviously released some blogs about the Codename Frontier stuff already. If you've been out on Bungie.net reading the Dev Insight blogs, there's been a good amount to dive into. But our friends over on the community team as well have been helping us kind of, read more into what the audience feedback has been and what the players are saying. And so we've had obviously some topics come up that I think we should just go ahead and dive on into.
Allez, ça parle.
Absolutely.
Ça parle.
That's the right attitude. Let's party at this early in the morning. Always the answer I want to hear. So Robbie, we'll go ahead and start with you. Sure. One of the things we said is that these expansions are going to be medium-sized. Can you help us understand a little bit more about what that means?
Ils vont parler un peu de la taille des DLC.
So expansions are changing going forward with Codename Frontiers. And
Salut, White.
Our philosophy behind this is moving from one really big, all-consuming tentpole moment that kind of takes all the oxygen in the room at one point in the year to two what we consider big tentpole moments happening in each year. And so those tentpole moments coming twice a year now are going to bring with them fresh content and new stories that are going to move the world of Destiny forward. And to answer your question directly, the way we're kind of looking at the size of these is similar to like Rise of Iron from Destiny.
Ok, c'est un peu comme les Seigneurs de Fer, les gars, sur Destiny, la taille des prochains DLC. À peu près.
What's kind of the reason we're talking about this, the rough shape of the box here.
Donc ça sera pas très gros non plus, quoi.
What comes with it is like each expansion is going to have its own unique version of a campaign and post-game experience that you can dive really deep into beyond the initial playthrough, similar to how things like the Dreaming City or the Pale Heart from the Final Shape had worked, where those beyond those initial campaign experiences, there's like further things to explore and secrets to uncover. And so making our expansions unique and deeply replayable is a big goal for us, in large part to support all the new gear and the new tiering of gear that we're putting into the game, right? And so it's one about, each of these expansions, again, they're going to tell a really compelling story as part of our next saga, but I really want to stress that they're also going to be unique experiences, unique campaigns and post games.
Yeah, I know that's something like, I've kind of overheard some of the conversations where when it comes to these expansions as well, obviously the corollary we're using today is Rise of Iron, but like these are going to be brand new experiences, things that we just like haven't released before in the past.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that as well? Or?
Yeah, definitely. And so for Codename Apollo specifically, the first expansion coming up with Frontiers, you're going to journey to a Metroidvania-inspired destination, right? That's our guiding light for how we're creating this new location. And so this new destination is going to feature a non-linear campaign that puts you, in the driver's seat of exploring its world and its story. So this is very different from the past, where you're kind of following a very linear mission structure or line. That's very simple in many ways. And Allison actually recently talked a bunch about this in a blog post.
Yeah. So when we made the decision to lean into that Metroidvania structure, we knew that the narrative structure had to match, like had to complement that structure as well. And so the way that we're going to treat nonlinearity in Codename Apollo is when you arrive at our destination, which is a new destination, you'll be able to decide if you want to go to region D or region C, or maybe you want to go check out B, because that's going to be where you get the ability that allows you to access region A so you can talk to that character that you really like. We really want that sense of the player being in the driver's seat, of being able to decide where and how they want to explore and discover the secrets that we have in the world. And whichever of those different choices that you make doesn't negate the others. We want you to explore
ça, on le savait déjà, les gars.
the experience. And to help support that, we've structured our story
on n'aura pas une campagne linéaire, si on peut
way.
décider donc où est-ce qu'on va en premier et donc explorer chaque zone un peu comme on veut, dans l'ordre qu'on veut.
But there's also between 25 and 30 different threads of stories that you can discover and chain together after you complete an activity. There's so much richness to discover that we're creating.
You see that little thread of that shining rock somewhere, you can really just afford to pull on it and just dive in by the sound
Absolutely, that's what we want you to do.
Okay, that's awesome. So actually, let's go ahead and stay on the topic of story here for just a second as well. You know,
Elle veut vraiment l'emblème.
Arrêtez avec la sœur. About the future of narrative destiny, which has obviously been so central to the experience, so core to our characters and our stories. There's been some concern that maybe the new structure might not afford the opportunity for as much story in the past. Can you tell us a little bit about what you guys are planning and what that means?
That would be news to me if it suddenly vanished. I like what
Allison,
I do.
please stay.
Please don't let go. Yeah, exactly.
Is this how we find out?
No, story is destiny. Like what makes destiny destiny is that beating heart of story at its core. That's not going anywhere. The thing that this new structure allows us comes in two parts for story. Like part one is pacing. With these 2 tentpole beats a year, the feeling that the world is changing and growing and moving is going to come much quicker now, which means that we can move the plot along at a much quicker pace than we used to. Part 2 is focus. Because these are much more focused releases, we don't have to worry about padding the sides with a bunch of extra stuff to kind of fill in the space. Like, nope, we are zeroing in on exactly what each of these releases is trying to communicate. And so that means we're going to tell a more focused story and with pacing that keeps up with what fans want.
I mean,
Non, là, il part de l'année 11, là, Billy.
You know, obviously,
il part de l'année 11.
One big part, the story you're telling, the words on the page, but another part of it, you know, given that we have the unique opportunity with a medium like video games, is how players interact with it. We've seen some comments online and some notable conversations about, you know, go talk to vendor X, head over to the holodeck and say hello to this other person, go back to vendor X and shake their hand one more time. Can you tell us a little bit about that structure, what you guys are planning on?
Yeah, it drives us bonkers too. No, we believe that everything should be questioned, right? Like we should be questioning that structure and we should be reinvestigating it. And starting with Revenant and especially when we get to Apollo, we're going to be deliberately shaking it up. By the time we get to Apollo, that loop, that pattern is more or less gone. We're shaking things up a lot.
I mean, Allison spoke to it earlier, but all those threads that you're pulling on, right? Like these are characters out in the world that you're exploring and discovering, right, as part of your journey here. And so it's not you going to the
commence
same
une toute nouvelle
location
histoire, les gars. On commence une toute nouvelle histoire. On va donc découvrir de nouvelles zones, de nouvelles personnes, tout ça. Franchement, les gars, ça sent bon cette histoire. Moi, je dis dans 10 ans, les gars, on est encore sur D2. Ou peut-être D3, mais... J'ai pas trop suivi D2 l'année 11, c'est en 2025, c'est ça? Juin, été 2025.
You've got some cool concept art to share with us as well. Okay. Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday everyone who's born on
Looking
October
at concept
1st.
art is always a joy.
Ça sent la corotte plutôt?
It's better than wrapping paper covering a PlayStation. I don't know.
It's true.
Let's go ahead and take a look. So this is, we've got up on screen kind of one of our first pieces of concept art for the future. Can you tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here?
No, I can't.
Qu'est-ce que c'est ça? Qu'est-ce que c'est ça?
What I can tell you is that this is some concept art of our new destination, which, like I said, is
Ok, un concept de la nouvelle destination.
Which means that these people that you're seeing are people that we haven't met yet.
C'est des personnes qu'on n'a jamais rencontrées encore. Vraiment, si on va rencontrer de nouveaux personnages, les gars, c'est vraiment une toute nouvelle histoire.
the more you start to see things that are kind of familiar all the way out at this new location.
Yeah, it's like
so lots of fun things to discover.
What's the symbol on that banner? Is this a seance or a wedding ceremony? Who knows?
I know,
right?
and I'm not
selling a single soul.
Nope.
Okay, all right. Plenty to dive into, including we've got another piece of concept art here as well.
Yeah,
on a autre concept.
Something we talk about a lot. And
Wow,
I think the last concept really
C'est quoi cette
spoke to it is,
sorcellerie?
like especially when we're developing a new destination like this, like we really think about like what is a storied history that's happened here. What's something that players can like really sink their teeth into and dig deep into. And you know, going into this concept, something that I love about it that's really resonant with me with a lot of the early creative discussions we had on it is that we wanted this place to feel like an exotic world that
un monde exotique.
is just tailor-built around the
On va aller en
joy
Australie, les gars.
right? And then so within this new destination in Apollo, you're going to be discovering powerful abilities in order to uncover secrets in this location and in order to carve a path to the great mystery at the heart of the planet.
Yeah.
And that's what like these concepts, you know, when I look at them in retrospective as the team is now actively like building a bunch of this stuff. It's very evocative for me from that feeling of like, hey, how can, it's something Tyson and Alice and I talk a lot about is like, how can we get that like grand mystery in that game, that feeling that there's something right around the corner, that like it's kind of at the heart, has been at the heart of Destiny for a long time.
Yeah.
And as we've been closing down the Light Dark saga, it's been an amazing roller coaster ride, but we want to expand and grow Destiny and we want to change it.
Yeah.
And you know, that's what I think these concepts are starting to speak for us, trying to show not just us telling of like some of that direction.
Yeah, I mean it's exciting to see because I think one thing I've heard you guys talk about a lot as well is just the
Moi, ça me
inspirations
hype, les gars, le fait qu'on commence une toute autre histoire, là.
You guys have been diving into a lot of
Le
crazy
jeu n'est pas
subject
mort, les
matters
gars.
on your own to get inspired as well. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of some of the fun reading or listening you've been doing as you've been going through this?
Sure. One of the fun parts about being a creative is that you have to fill the tank with something.
Yeah, certainly.
And so that means doing a lot of research, finding a lot of other targets in media, or even just like what music you're listening to while you're working on a script, right?
Yeah.
I know for our team, something that really inspired us was music of the 1960s. We've listened to a lot of early prog.
Elle est en train de parler de la musique qu'elle écoute quand elle fait quand elle écrit l'histoire, tout ça. On s'en fiche, la sœur.
There's a lot of Slaughterhouse-Five inside of this.
Cheery.
We love to look for inspiration outside of just games because there's so much in the world that can fill that tank and get us inspired for what's coming next. And we also look to television, of course, too.
Yeah.
Je sortirai une vidéo résumée, je sais pas encore ce que je ferai.
Allison, as the narrative director, much better at referencing text. I'm a little bit more of a visual.
Je pense que je ferai peut-être une vidéo résumée ou je mettrai le live en entier, je sais pas. Ou les deux.
Social media and TikTok have rotted us all.
They've just rotted me. Actually.
But yeah, like when we talk about like all this inspirational media, like one of the things, Destiny also being a sci-fi game that we talked a bunch about was for Apollo was Scavenger's Reign. That's something that Allison, remember an early concepting we were talking about, and we're like, oh wow, that media, that TV show is so great because like it's familiar in some ways, but as you get closer and you really look at their world, it's really strange and different and weird and mysterious. And it really kind of just builds this halo of allure around it that is something that really spoke to us when we're thinking about like how can we introduce something new to the game at the top of Frontiers.
That's exciting. All right. So there's obviously a lot of new inspirations. We had a chance to look at some concept art, but Allison, I got to put you on the spot just one last time. Do you have any other teasers for us or anything you can give us before?
Vas-y, envoie.
Okay, even better.
Okay. So imagine going to a mansion, like a really nice, really big fancy house.
Okay,
and
not just in the tutorial to Tomb Raider.
No. Like a nice.
Okay, thank you.
So you're going in and looking at like a parlor room or something, and maybe the owner of the house tells you there's a secret door somewhere in here. Yeah. And you're looking around and you can see the door that you came through and you can see the window, but it kind of looks like a dead end, like there's nothing in here. And everyone knows that a good secret door comes from like behind a bookcase.
Right.
Like you go up to a bookcase and pull on a book or a little statue that's been in front of your face the whole time, but you just haven't had the focus on it yet. And if you pull on that, it opens up the secret door, and suddenly what was a dead end looks like an entryway.
Yeah.
And that's what this saga is.
Okay, that's very exciting. And it won't be like Young Frankenstein where I get stuck in the door. Or
You will not get stuck in the door. No.
Promis, on va checker tous les murs machin pour voir s'il n'y a pas des entrées secrètes.
Okay, all right. Thank you again, Allison, so much. There's obviously a lot of cool stuff to dive into, but we'll let you and yours keep crafting. But we've got also one more subject as well. Robbie, I'd love to bug you about one more thing, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So we've seen some feedback on reward tiers and how there might not be enough variation in loot for players to go ahead and get encouraged to go ahead and keep chasing down more gear. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're all building right now and kind of what that means to you?
Yeah, so this is like very valid feedback, just acknowledging that in the first place, because the first thing we announced was just like, hey, there's some new tiers, right? And then obviously, yeah, you're going to look at that and go like, well, I have a bunch of amazing armor and weapons now, so like, why does this matter in the future? And so totally, yeah, that feedback makes a lot of sense to us. And so what's really top of mind and has been for us for a little while now is how we can make not only chasing gear within individual tiers interesting and the whole system interesting, but also how we can make those higher tiers of gear compelling to chase, right? To have that mountain to climb. And so that comes in two forms that I can talk a little bit about today. One, I can go a little more in depth on, which is our next generation armor. That's going to be coming
nouvelle génération d'armure.
Frontiers. And then we have some
Avec
really
le
early
système de
thinking
tir.
for weapons.
Okay.
And
Et
so
pareil donc
for
pour les
armor,
armes.
yeah, let's start there.
Yeah.
Is that okay, Andy?
That's perfect.
Yeah,
If you wouldn't mind, Robbie.
Yeah, I would.
Okay,
happy
thank
to.
you.
So yeah, let me lean in here to focus a little bit. So for next generation armor, we really want to make armor valuable again. We want to make it easier to understand, and we really want it to have create new build crafting identities. That's something that's like really close to home for us right now, because we've had a similar system for quite a while now. And so part of making it valuable, easy to understand, new identities is one of the big pieces is going to be a large stat rework to the armor pieces.
Un rework des stats des armures.
There's going to be fewer stats on each individual piece of armor. So it makes it way easier to quickly compare pieces of gear and be like, oh, this one's better than that one. I'm building into a specific, discipline, strength, whatever, and you can better understand that. That also means that there's going to be fewer things we call dump stats. Like you looking at a piece of gear and going like, oh man, it only gives me +5 resilience. I don't really want that.
Trash it.
Yeah, exactly. And like, there's still going to be cases where it's like, oh, it has a lot of resilience, but that's not what I'm building into. But it's just going to be way easier to just glance at stuff.
Very cool.
And figure it out. But beyond that, right, like how can we answer that question of how can next-gen armor have this new build crafting identity? It also, we want to bring new things to the table, right? And so part of the stat rework, we're going to go beyond 100, Andy.
We go beyond sometimes.
Beyond 100.
Yeah, we've gone beyond
On
light.
va pouvoir aller au-dessus
Beyond
des 100.
with prismatic.
What
This
else
just makes sense.
Yeah. Now we're going to go beyond 100 with armor. Who knew? Like, who knew that's where we go?
It was just hidden in the lore book.
On va voir
somewhere,
combien de
I'm
points de
right,
stats.
Allison?
Yeah,
Right?
sure.
Right? Okay. All right. Thank you.
No, we'll
No one double check that.
On va pouvoir faire des
But
60 plus 100, les gars.
So what I mean by going beyond 100, so let's talk about strength, for instance. And so this is some early thinking from the team. So in the 1 to 100 range, it would still reduce your melee cooldown like it does today. It would still have that, so that would still be really easy to understand. But then from that 101 to 200 range, beyond 100, every point into strength at that point would then give you a chance in order to activate a second melee when power melee becomes charged.
Quoi?
So basically, you get double melee. You get to double throw your shields, or double throw your knives, or throw
Eh,
whatever warlock. space magic
non,
stuff they
c'est
throw.
vrai?
I don't play warlocks.
I'm a hunter.
Yeah.
Alors les gars, je crois que je viens de comprendre un truc, mais...
I can't jump, sorry.
Withering blades. That's it.
But really, like, the key thing to there, right, is like that starts to create an identity for
Je vais en
what
parler
you
juste
want to
après.
build craft into that's very different than just like, oh, hey, yeah, I'm building in a melee, lower cooldown, that's cool. But now you can start build crafting into like, okay, I'm going to regularly, especially at the higher end, start to get
Là, il
double
parle,
melee charges.
par exemple, si vous avez 200 en force, donc vous avez 1% de chance de proc une deuxième mêlée chargée, par exemple.
Yeah. Another big thing that's coming with next generation armor to the game is set bonuses. And so this is something, I know, right?
Yes.
Yeah, like, they're back.
So ready.
Yeah, we've done like some small versions of it in the past, have been like individual releases, but we're looking at this as like a holistic new system that's coming with pretty much every piece of new legendary armor set that we create, starting with Frontiers.
Okay.
And so these set bonuses are going to come in the form of wearing 2 or 4 pieces of a 5-piece set. So that gives you flexibility in order to wear an exotic at any point, and then also allows you to mix and match different sets. So you can actually start looking at like gear and go like, oh, I have tier 1, tier 2 of one set, tier 3 of other, and I actually want to like mix match them together for different combinatorics, for different build crafting identities. I'm getting like really deep into the weeds here, but the thing that's like really exciting about this is that like one of the perks the team is playing around with that these new set bonuses could give you could be one that's built all around like Tex Mechanica style play, which is like all about hip firing, right, and all about that yeehaw. And then like the more you build into that, you're going to be buffing your Tex Mechanica weapons. And so that's just like one example. But yeah, it's the whole space is just going to
c'est un concept, c'est pas encore sûr les gars, mais il parle donc par exemple de faire des sets d'armure qui vont vous donner certains buffs. Donc là notamment donc le set d'armure Tex Mechanica qui pourrait donc buffer les armes de constructeurs Tex Mechanica. Bon.
Well. Yeah, so we're a little earlier on weapons right now. We wanted to talk about next-gen armor because we have a lot of juicy, good plans coming together right now. But for weapons, the thing I can say is that like in the game today, we have higher tiers of weapons to chase, like adepts and raid weapons, right? And so those things with them come with exclusive perks that basically, cut above the noise of other weapons you might be earning in any individual release. And so we know from the tiering perspective of weapons themselves that like, hey, we already have this kind of touchstone for us that we see that works pretty well. And it's like, so it's really like, how can we meet or clear that bar, right? Like how can we create those exclusive chases at the top of that aspirational mountain for players to climb?
So actually, additionally too, we've heard some concerns that, obviously we're going to maybe be over-indexing on just bringing back reprised weapons. And Guardians will just be out there chasing down something and re-earning something that's just sitting in the vault anyway. Can you tell us a little bit more about like kind of the weapon chase and what you guys are planning on doing with each, subsequent release?
Yeah, so just to like make sure to clear the air here a little bit, right? Like every expansion, every season, every raid, every dungeon, there's gonna be new weapons, right? We're not slowing down there in terms of like making a lot of compelling new weapon content.
Cool. Okay.
But the thing about reprisals and revisions that I think is true for a lot of Destiny players is like you have that favorite gun, right? You have that gun that you loved at one point in time, and over time it's just not as useful in the contemporary tuning, activity, sandbox, whatever, isn't as good over the years. And so like we did with the Brave Arsenal and Into the Light, like that's our touchstone for like,
Et du coup là il donne l'exemple donc des armes de l'arsenal Bravoure.
Fan favorite weapons, bring them back, breathe some new life into them, and make them interesting to use again. And I also think what's great about that is that people who never got to use their Recluse or Better Devils or something that we haven't reprised just yet, right? Is like, oh, that's their first time experience with it, and they've heard how cool it is.
To all the Guardians who are going to dive into Revenant and get to try Chroma Rush for the first time.
Oh yeah.
I'm trying that gun for the first time. It's so good. I'm glad it's coming back. Okay, that all sounds awesome. So everything that Robbie just spoke to, there's going to be a next-gen armor article going up on Bungie.net after the stream wraps up. But Robbie, is there anything else you want to say?
Yeah, so something that I should probably touch on is like we're talking a lot about like all this cool gear and like, but like there's a question here, right? That immediately becomes posed of like why does it matter, right? Like why do I care about it? And so we've talked a little bit, right, about the fact that there's going to be customizable difficulty coming in Destiny with Frontiers, and then also changes to modifiers and things like that with like the Banes that we announced in the recent blog post.
Il parle des modificateurs qu'on va pouvoir mettre en une heure, tout ça.
Making expansions deeply replayable, kind of like I was talking about earlier in our section, and then the customizable difficulty, and then the new modifier systems. Like, these are all things that are being built into a structure so that you're going to need to chase that high tier gear. You're going to need to craft that complex set bonus, perfect combination of Tex Mechanica gear in order to take on some of the hardest challenges inside of the game. And so this isn't just about changing gear. This is also figuring out how we can bring new and interesting challenge to Destiny and how we can really like breathe life into the challenge of the game.
Very exciting. Awesome.
Yeah. Should be fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, plenty more information on that to arrive on the blog that's going to be arriving on Bungie.net shortly after this. But I don't think I'm going to be able to talk
ils vont sortir un article, je crois, après le live.
Go ahead and close out the stream here today by first thanking all of you fine folks at home for joining us today. We love getting a chance to put these streams on and hang out with all of you in the community. It doesn't mean anything unless you show up. So thank you for taking the time to join us today. As a reminder as well, there's a Twitch shop going on right now. That's a heads up. You can probably see it pinned in chat, but just to remind everyone at home that if you've earned the Twitch drop, I should say, rather, it will be arriving on your Guardian when Revenant launches on October 8th. So if you don't get it today, worry not. That's by design.
Ok. Là, l'emblème, les gars, du drop, vous l'aurez que semaine prochaine.
And of course, a huge thanks to our guests here, Robbie and Allison. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Andy.
Absolutely. And then the folks from our first segment as well, Chris, Clayton, and Jerome as well, Incredible. Thank you so much for taking them to join us. And of course, we'd be remiss if we if we didn't mention the amazing folks doing the actual heavy lifting behind the scenes. Peyton, Ashley, and Justin, thank you so much. Of course, Ashley, one of the folks that helped design a lot of the stuff we looked at today. So thank you all for taking the time to joining us from the throne world, as we call it here, back here in the studio.
Le monde du trône.
A quick recap. We talked today a little bit about what's to arrive with Act 1 of Revenant, arriving just next week, next reset.
Ah, moi, c'est hypé, les gars. Là, ils m'ont réussi à me hype là, pour la prochaine saison.
It'll be shipping out on October 11th. And remember, if you're one of those top 3 teams to go ahead and make your way through, then you'll be able to get the cool embroidered hoodie as well. But there's going to be more information about that arriving on our socials. And then I think that's about it. I think I've concluded my notes here on my laptop. So again, thank you all for taking the time to join us. Make sure and follow us at Destiny the Game across the board on whatever social channel you like. Make sure and check out our Discord as well. We've been making some updates out there in terms of the announcement channels. And keep an eye out for the TWID for all this great information. And lastly, but very not least, .net after this stream concludes. Read that Next Gen Armor article. We're giving you guys lots of information. Is it fair? No, but we like you, so we're going to keep doing it anyway. So,
on va peut-être aller lire ça après.
Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you all Starside.
Ah, l'image, elle est banger par contre.